Oh, I've already changed the dressings myself. You can go. Oliver Blake's eyes widened in astonishment, her body trembling suddenly. Master, your wounds are severe. Doing it yourself could tear them open, preventing them from healing. You can go. Damien Black had turned his back to her, clearly unwilling to continue the conversation. Oliver Blake's face instantly became unsightly. Master had always been averse to women touching him. Since Oliver Blake had started serving him, he had never been as seriously injured as yesterday. Thus, yesterday was the only time she had the opportunity to be close to his body. She had thought that the daily dressing changes would bring her and her master closer, but unexpectedly, by the second day, he was already tending to himself. Then, what use was a lowly disciple like her in Carter Manor? Oliver Blake, feeling resentful but unable to say anything more, could only bite her lip and stiffly leave Damien Black's room. Damien Black clutched his chest and quietly stood up. The sunlight grew increasingly intense. Damien Black gave orders to prepare for the journey back to the imperial capital in the next few days, then quietly entered his study. He remained there all morning before emerging, but no one expected that upon stepping out, he would be met by the Carter Manor steward with a worried expression. Master, something has happened at the young estate, the steward said. Damien Black furrowed his brow. What is it, regarding the young estate? The steward hurriedly replied, the situation isn't good. It seems the green lady from yesterday has inflicted another type of poison on young master. Hearing this, Damien Black's expression shifted. He descended a step, his voice heavy. What happened? The butler continued, I'm not sure, sir. Just now, young master suddenly began vomiting profusely, his face darkening alarmingly. His condition has clearly worsened. The maids attending him panicked and sought me out. On my way, I happened upon Oliver Blake and William Thomas. Oliver Blake examined young master and said it's a more complex poison. If there's no antidote within half an hour, I fear. Sweat beaded on the butler's face, his breath still ragged from running. The Carter family was furious, demanding to know what happened from the maid. She explained that Benjamin Young had been fine this morning, but after taking the medicine prepared by Miss Green at noon, he became like this. Damien Black's face hardened. He turned and strode swiftly towards Benjamin Young's quarters. Sophia Green, poisoning him? Damien Black scoffed. He didn't believe that woman was foolish enough to harm Benjamin Young within the Carter estate. Such an act would be a blatant display of contempt. The butler, startled, hurried after him. Halfway there, they met Samuel Harris, rushing over after hearing the news. None of the three men spoke, their pace quickening. You've been treating Benjamin Young. Now that something's happened, do you think you can shirk responsibility? Before they even entered, William Thomas's enraged roar reached them. His fury was clearly directed at Sophia Green. Samuel Harris frowned slightly, glancing at Damien Black. Seeing the man's impassive face, he remained silent. However, he couldn't believe Sophia Green would do such a thing. Not to mention she and Benjamin Young had no quarrel. If she truly wanted him dead, she wouldn't have bothered saving him initially, nor would she have chosen this moment to act. Such behavior would be akin to digging her own grave. William Thomas, usually composed, was this enraged, clearly driven by frantic worry. If I wanted him dead, I could crush him like an ant. Why resort to poison? Such a foolish method isn't my style. The disdainful voice cut through the air. Sophia Green's demeanor remained unchanged, displaying no anger at the accusation. Damien stopped abruptly, a slight lift of his hand halting the butler behind him. He gestured for Samuel Harris to proceed alone. Samuel Harris obeyed, puzzled by his master's decision but offering no argument. Entering, he saw several men flanking Sophia Green, their postures suggesting they intended to seize her. Yet, for some reason, they hesitated, their faces grim, wanting to touch her but not daring. Sophia Green, meanwhile, sat calmly, sipping tea as if she were in her own home, a mocking smile playing on her lips. Samuel Harris's lips twitched. He quickly stepped forward, shoving the men aside. Step aside. What are you doing? Samuel, you're finally here. Why so slow? I was almost dragged out and fed to the dogs. Sophia Green extended her hand, generously pouring him a cup of tea. In the past 2 days, Samuel Harris was the only person in the Carter estate she found tolerable. The men Samuel Harris had just dismissed twitched their lips. Almost fed to the dogs? They hadn't done anything to her. This woman was strange, her hands and clothes sprinkled with some powder. A mere touch, and their fingertips burned like fire. Clearly, they were the disadvantaged ones, weren't they? Samuel Harris gave a strained laugh, turned to the furious William Thomas, patted his shoulder, and lowered his voice. Don't be so angry. The matter hasn't been investigated yet, it's too early to jump to conclusions. What more investigation is needed? William Thomas's face flushed crimson, his fingers clenched tight, his eyes filled with anguish as he looked at Benjamin Young lying on the bed. Oliver Blake said Benjamin Young only had half an hour left to live. If Sophia Green didn't hand over the antidote, Benjamin Young wouldn't make it. Only then did Samuel Harris turn to the silent woman. His gaze made Oliver Blake's face redden with indignation. Samuel Harris, I know you don't believe me, but this time I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, you can go outside the manor and invite a physician in to see if my diagnosis is wrong. Hearing this, William Thomas's face darkened further. Sophia Green chuckled softly, gently placed the teacup in her hand on the table, and said, You're right. Your diagnosis is very accurate. In fact, after all the commotion we've made here, he probably has even less than half an hour left. Hand over the antidote. William Thomas abruptly stepped forward but was luckily intercepted by Samuel Harris. William Thomas, calm down. This young lady couldn't be the one who poisoned him. No one would dare to administer poison within Carter Manor. You're always so level-headed, why are you falsely accusing someone without discerning right from wrong today? Sophia Green glanced at Samuel Harris, a look of satisfaction on her face. Oliver Blake frowned, glaring at Samuel Harris through gritted teeth. William Thomas pressed his lips together for a long moment, speechless. Seeing the room quiet down, Samuel Harris finally exhaled slowly and walked towards Sophia Green with a smile. Miss Green, can you cure Benjamin Young's poison? Yes. Sophia Green glanced at him. Considering Samuel Harris's kindness towards her, she reluctantly spoke. Outside, the night was silent as if sterilized. The corners of her lips finally softened. Samuel Harris's and William Thomas's eyes lit up, staring intently at Sophia Green. But Oliver Blake's face paled, and her heart began to race. Seeing the two men place all their hope on Sophia Green, she grew increasingly irritated. Immediately, she sneered, You can cure him? Humph, you all heard it. This poison was clearly administered by her, otherwise, why would she have the antidote? Sophia Green smiled, giving Oliver Blake a lazy glance, finally unable to resist adding fuel to the fire. I thought Oliver Blake's prolonged silence today meant she had grown wiser, but it seems her composure is still lacking. Samuel Harris completely ignored Oliver Blake's words, stepping forward quickly. Miss Green, if you can cure the poison, would you please help Benjamin Young first? As you said, he has less than half an hour left. I can, but right now, I'm being wrongly accused. My heart is heavy with grief, I'm heartbroken and choked with sobs. I feel that heaven has treated me unfairly. I feel that life is meaningless and I just want to die. How can I be in the mood to cure someone else right now? Sophia Green clutched her chest, her expression as if she were critically ill, clearly unwilling to intervene. Samuel Harris's lips twitched slightly. Miss Green, I believe you. This wasn't your doing. What good is it if only you believe me? Samuel Harris quickly tugged at William Thomas. The latter frowned, somewhat reluctantly opening his mouth. Apologies, I shouldn't have doubted you. No need to say it so grudgingly. Sophia Green looked at Oliver Blake with interest. Oliver Blake took a step back, snorting. I don't believe you. Besides you, no one else had the opportunity to administer this poison. Sophia Green laughed, shrugging helplessly. You all heard it, there's nothing else I can do. In that case, let's investigate my matter clearly first. Miss Green. Sophia Green completely ignored Samuel Harris, raising her hand to point at the maid attending to Benjamin Young. As expected, it's because your young family drank my medicine that he's become like this. As soon as the words left her mouth, everyone's eyes fell on the maid. Faced with 4 or 5 burning gazes, the maid was so frightened that she dropped to her knees with a thud, trembling and nodding. Yes. Yes. I prepared the medicine, and I also administered it. I only glanced at it. I never touched the medicine from start to finish. How could I possibly have poisoned it? The maid was somewhat stunned, her whole body trembling. I didn't. As for the prescription, I apologize, but it only contains common supplements, with no conflicts. There's no way I could use the prescription to harm anyone. Of course, if you don't believe me, you can invite an outside physician to examine whether there's anything wrong with my supplements. The maid's head bowed lower, her body trembling more violently. I don't know. I really don't know. But from yesterday to today, the only people who came into contact with young Master were Miss Green and a few of you. Your relationships with young Master are all very good, so perhaps the problem wasn't with the medicine. Miss Green also gave young Master 2 small pills. Samuel Harris and William Thomas frowned, exchanging glances but remaining silent. Sophia Green gave a wry smile. You're quite skilled at being afraid, your body is still trembling, but your words are very clear and coherent. Tell me, who taught you? No one taught me. The maid panicked, perhaps having never encountered such a situation before, and subconsciously looked towards Oliver Blake. Sophia Green immediately lost interest. Whether it was this maid or Oliver Blake, both were amateurs, doing bad things without knowing how to conceal them properly. Such a blatant framing attempt, Samuel Harris and William Thomas, 2 astute men, would certainly be able to see through it. Next, she probably wouldn't need to intervene. Sure enough, the maid's small action immediately caused William Thomas's expression to become stern. He suddenly looked up at Oliver Blake, asking in a deep voice, "Does this have anything to do with you?" William Thomas, what do you mean? Are you trying to say that I poisoned Benjamin Young? Why would I do such a thing? What benefit would it bring me? You're ridiculous. I've been at Carter Manor for so long, yet you'd rather believe a stranger who just arrived than me. Fine, you're all very capable. If anything happens in the future, don't come looking for me, lest I poison you. As soon as she finished speaking, she glared at the maid, then turned and ran outside. After she had run far away, Damian Black quietly emerged from the shadows, his deep eyes following her receding figure, his voice cold, ordered her to leave Carter Manor. The butler was stunned for a moment, slightly embarrassed. Master Oliver Blake is, after all, Elder Stone's disciple, possessing exceptional medical skills. If we dismiss her like this, when the master is injured, I fear. Damian calmly withdrew his gaze, looked at the door once more, and unexpectedly chuckled. Humph, isn't there someone with even greater medical skills here? If it weren't for Elder Stone's sake, Oliver Blake's audacity alone would be enough to warrant her death. Expelling her from the manor is the last shred of respect I'm giving Elder Stone. The butler gaped, silently watching his master, finally closing his mouth and nodding in understanding. Having said that, he looked up at the room, silently pitying Miss Green, whose fate had been decided by the master. He wondered how Miss Green would react when she learned of this, hoping she wouldn't become enraged to the point of losing control. Just as the butler thought this, the sound of a chair crashing to the floor echoed from within the room. His heart skipped a beat, and immediately after, he heard Sophia Green's cold voice, "Given the current situation, tell me, how will this be handled?" Samuel Harris gave a dry cough and tugged sharply at William Thomas. William Thomas's face was momentarily awkward, but after the recent incident, he realized his impulsive actions and mistake. Now, hearing that his friend was saved, he finally calmed down. Seeing Sophia Green's displeasure, he quickly stepped forward and bowed his head, saying, "I apologize, Miss Green, I acted impulsively." "And then?" Sophia Green asked. William Thomas was stunned for a moment, then understood. "Rest assured, Miss Green, we will certainly not let that girl off." "Anything else?" Sophia Green continued to ask. Samuel Harris coughed again, explaining in a low voice beside William Thomas's ear, Miss Green, Oliver Blake is one of the master's people, we can't touch her. But rest assured, we will definitely report this matter to the master in full. I believe the master will deal with Oliver Blake severely and help you vent your anger. Help me vent my anger? Sophia Green chuckled coldly, those words make it sound like I hold some grand position. Oliver Blake intended to harm someone from Carter Manor, what does it have to do with me? But that's not what I'm asking. Then what else? Samuel Harris and William Thomas glanced at each other, worry creeping into their hearts. Dealing with those two isn't enough? William Thomas stepped forward, hastily saying, I've been wrongly accused, Miss Green. If you're still not appeased, I'm at your disposal. Sophia Green's lips twitched slightly, inwardly shaking her head. Could these two be any more foolish? Outside the door, Damian Black raised an eyebrow, then whispered a few words into the butler's ear. The butler's eyes widened as he listened, and after a long moment, he nodded, swallowed, and stepped inside. Those in the room breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing the butler enter. Miss Green, our master understands your grievance. Here are 100 taels of gold, please accept them and calmly detoxify Mr. Pang. Of course, as long as Mr. Young is safe and sound, our master will reward you handsomely. We hope that with this reward in mind, Miss Green will no longer be angry. Sophia Green's eyes gleamed as her jade-like hand flipped gracefully, accepting the gold bar from the steward. Her fingers brushed lightly over its surface, testing its weight, before she let out a soft hum, a cold, haughty nod indicating her satisfaction with this sweet offering. Samuel Harris and William Thomas gaped, dumbfounded, as they watched her take the gold, rise impassively, and stride towards the young maid kneeling on the floor, still trembling with fear. They watched as Sophia kicked the maid over, stepped on the back of her hand, then walked over to William Thomas and forced a pill into his mouth. Humph. Only now does my mood improve somewhat. Finally satisfied, Sophia Green walked to Benjamin Young's bedside and slowly sat down. William Thomas clutched his throat, coughing violently, his face flushed crimson. He pointed a shaking finger at Sophia Green, You. What did you make me swallow? Sophia Green glanced at him. Didn't you just say I could handle it as I saw fit? Why aren't you happy now? And as for that udon? Someone wouldn't just try to poison me for no reason. Do you think you can just walk away scot-free after this? William Thomas, speechless, could only try to claw at his throat. But the pill had long since dissolved and gone down. How could he possibly bring it back up? He didn't know what Sophia Green had given him, or if it was life-threatening. His anxiety grew as a wave of nausea rolled through him, followed by a gurgling in his stomach. His face paled, and understanding dawned. He turned and ran from the room, searching for the privy. Samuel Harris, watching with a cold sweat trickling down his spine, dared not show Sophia Green any disrespect. He immediately ordered someone to take the young maid away, then took small, careful steps towards Sophia, his face plastered with a fawning smile. Miss Green, is there anything I can do to help? The steward standing nearby looked at him with disdain. Master Shin, you've never fawned over even the master like this. Sophia Green observed Benjamin Young's condition, it was indeed grave. In this situation, it seemed only her ice stew pill could resolve it. But she only had 5 ice stew pills and hadn't been willing to use even one. If she used one on him, wouldn't she be at a great loss? One of these pills was worth more than 100 taels of gold. Samuel Harris, standing beside her, couldn't help but speak up when he saw her lost in thought. Is it really that difficult to deal with? Sophia Green glanced at him. Have you heard of the ice stew pill? Yes, it's a medicine that can cure all poisons. So, miss, are you saying the only way to save Benjamin Young is to use an ice stew pill? But I've heard that this medicine is extremely precious, there are only 15 in existence, and they're not easy to find. Samuel Harris began to wipe the sweat from his brow. At this moment, he truly wished Oliver Blake were dead. Do you know the market price of an ice stew pill? She, of course, knew they weren't easy to find. If they were, she wouldn't be so hesitant. Shining paused for a moment, then nodded. 'Tis true, one was once offered for sale, fetching a king's ransom of 3 million taels of silver, a sum equal to half a year's revenue for the royal treasury. Only the wealthiest families in the capital or the emperor himself could afford such a treasure. Sophia Green's eyes widened in astonishment. So dear a price? Then, with 5 iced pearls upon my person, I carry a veritable fortune. 'Tis a mercy I do not flaunt such riches. She mused. Tell you what, I've no need for the full 3 million. I'll offer you a generous discount, a mere 1.5 million taels. Penny a promissory note, and an iced pearl is yours. Samuel Harris's eyes bulged, his pupils dilated, his gaze fixed upon Green Ton Low in disbelief, his voice a stammer. You say, you're ill? Ill indeed, and not just him, even Damian Black, standing at the threshold, raised a surprised brow. This Sophia Green truly possessed a formidable background. An item absent even from the imperial palace, she possessed and offered at such a reduced price. Sophia Green cast a disdainful glance at Samuel Harris. Was it so strange for her to possess iced pearls? Why such a look, as if questioning whence she'd pilfered them? Well, will you write the note or no? If not, I wash my hands of this Benjamin Young. If she could, she would directly ask Oliver Blake for the antidote, but the two poisons, now mingled, rendered even Oliver Blake's remedy useless. Samuel Harris swallowed hard, then stammered, his face a mask of near tears. Mistress Green, even if I were to write such a note, I haven't the means to repay such a sum. 1.5 million taels. I couldn't earn that in a lifetime. I beg you, consider my plight. I am but a humble guard. Could you, perhaps, offer a further discount? Sophia Green scoffed. Then I am at an impasse. I cannot undertake such a costly endeavor for no gain. Mistress Green, we implore you, attend to Master Young. Should he recover 1.5 million taels, our master will gladly deliver. The steward, having slipped out and returned unnoticed, stepped forward respectfully, relaying Damian Black's words to Sophia Green. Samuel Harris breathed a sigh of relief, though 1.5 million taels was no small sum. That his master would expend such a fortune for Benjamin Young's life moved him deeply. Sophia Green raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. She hadn't expected such regard for a subordinate's life. With this assurance, she could proceed with confidence. Sophia Green retrieved a small box from her person and carefully withdrew a translucent white pill. Samuel Harris, gulping, stepped forward, eager for a closer look at the precious object. But Sophia Green's movements were swift, the box snapped shut, and the small white pill disappeared into young Eagle's mouth. The iced pearl was indeed a rare treasure. In mere moments, young Eagle's complexion began to shift. Samuel Harris watched, his face alight with joy, his gaze upon Sophia Green shining with admiration. The steward, like a phantom, reappeared in the room as young Eagle's color improved, murmuring to Sophia Green. Miss Green, the master invites you. Sophia Green's expression shifted slightly, glancing at the butler behind her, slowly gathering her things, slowly rising to her feet. Is he going to pay me? The butler's lips twitched. This Miss Green was indeed not an easy person to dismiss. He didn't say much, only gestured in invitation, leading the way towards the door. Sophia Green took a few steps forward, then turned back to instruct. If you still want to keep your life, you'd best keep watch here yourself. I don't have a second ice road pill. Even if I die, I won't take it out. Samuel Harris hastily nodded, very carefully carrying a chair to sit at the head of the bed. Sophia Green raised an eyebrow and followed the butler without turning back. The manor was truly vast. The butler led her through several winding paths before finally stopping in front of a house that looked incredibly cold and serene. The master is inside, Miss Green, please. The butler's steps halted, as if he didn't intend to go any further. Sophia Green could only shrug and ascend the steps herself. She looked up at the two words solitary pavilion above the entrance. Damian Black, it truly suited the scene. His name had the word solitary. His residence also used this word, how desolate. She raised her hand to knock a few times, but then reconsidered. She was here to collect a debt. The debt collector was the boss, there was no need for such formalities. She then switched to the demeanor of someone owed a great deal of money, pushing the door open without a word. The butler, about to leave, stumbled, nearly falling forward, then without a word, quickly took small steps away from this place of potential conflict. He always had a premonition that this Miss Green was not someone to provoke. As the door opened, Sophia Green's eyes swept like a wolf towards the seat on the right, the words leaving her mouth finally met. The following words were swallowed back as she clearly saw Damien Black's appearance. Although the entire room was cold and quiet, the stranger's keep-out aura emanating from Damien Black was still incredibly intimidating. Sophia Green couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Having lived 2 lifetimes, she rarely encountered anyone as venomous as Damien Black. A person who could so perfectly blend appearance and aura made her want to act perversely and smash his face to a pulp. Taking a deep breath, Sophia Green tried to suppress her surging emotions, striving to prevent herself from becoming perverse. After a long moment, she clenched her hands, which were hanging loosely at her sides, took a step forward, and looked directly at Damien Black. "What did you call me for? Are you finally going to pay me the 15 million taels of silver?" She was truly afraid he would renege on the debt. Damien Black only slowly lifted his eyelids. This was also the first time he had closely observed Sophia Green face to face like this. This woman's temperament was indeed vastly different from her appearance. Her appearance was clearly gentle and fresh, but her words and actions were decisive and resolute, without hesitation. But it couldn't be denied, she had the capital to be so decisive. Right breast. Damien Black closed his eyes again, only slowly uttering these words. The woman standing before him was slightly stunned. "What do you mean?" "My right breast. It needs to be healed within 4 days." Damien Black added. Sophia Green finally understood. He meant his right breast was injured and needed her to heal it, and it had to be done within 4 days. "Could you please be clear? We've just met, we're not close enough to be mind-linked." "No, that's not the point. The point is, who are you to me? What gives you the right to speak to me in this tone, ordering me around? I'm just a lost lamb, not your slave, and certainly not that little Oliver Blake's handmaid." Sophia Green snorted softly, glanced at him, and decisively hooked a small stool with her foot, sat down by the table, and poured herself a cup of water to soothe her throat. Silence fell over the room. Sophia Green was unhurried, and Damien Black was also patient. She felt that if he wanted her to heal him, he should show some sincerity, even if he didn't have 300 or 500 taels of silver, his tone should at least be sincere, so that she could listen comfortably, and maybe she would do a good deed for the day. The other felt that this woman's temperament was indeed very arrogant, still so unruly in his territory, not putting anyone in her eyes. Damien Black's fingers began to tap lightly on the armrest of the chair. After a moment, his deep voice rang out, "Oliver Blake is gone, so there is no physician in the manor at present." Sophia Green's hand paused mid-sip. 3 black lines appeared on her forehead. "What does her leaving have to do with me? I dismissed her because of you." Sophia Green choked on her tea. She turned her head, eyes wide. Did this man know how easily misunderstood that statement was? She glared at Damien Black. But he remained as he was. Feeling very annoyed, she couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. "Because of me? What does her leaving have to do with me? She wanted to poison your subordinate. You dismissing her is your own prerogative. Why drag me into this? If you hadn't appeared at Carter Manor, Dawn wouldn't have been jealous. She wouldn't have attacked my friend. Her target was you. You and she fought, and I sided with you. So, in the end, it's still because of you." But the steward said that when Dawn left, she had 2 black spots on her face, showing signs of festering. He thought it must be the work of the woman in front of him. "Ah, thank you so much for siding with me, a stranger you've only met once." Sophia Green really wanted to spit in his face. "Yes, you should feel honored. Can I send you to the Western Paradise with a needle?" Sophia Green thought the most thick-skinned, shameless person in the world was her bratty son. It turned out there were even higher mountains. He could actually say such shameless words without changing his expression. She was truly speechless. Putting down her cup, Sophia Green didn't want to argue with him anymore. She couldn't heal him anyway. There was no benefit for her in this matter, she would be crazy to bring trouble upon herself. Patting her clothes and adjusting her hair, she turned towards the door. Damien Black raised an eyebrow. Silent. However, just as her hand touched the doorframe, about to open the door, that deep voice rang out again. 15 million taels. Sophia Green's hand recoiled. She turned, running towards Damien Black. A cold expression settled on her face as she stood before him. Are you trying to renege on our deal? Damien Black laughed, his mood inexplicably brightening. A subtle, captivating smirk played on his lips. Nearby, Sophia Green's heart pounded erratically. That damned man, what was he doing? Didn't he know he was a walking disaster? No, I'm not planning on welshing on the debt. So you intend to give it to me now? No, besides that word, what else did he know how to say? Then what do you mean? What was our original agreement? Damien Black was rarely this patient. Sophia Green thought for a moment, recalling the steward's earlier words. Feng Ying's safe and sound return. 15 million taels of silver as a deposit. Are you playing word games with me? Safe and sound. What a convenient phrase. Damien Black shifted slightly, settling into a more comfortable position. However, this posture pressed directly against the wound on his right chest. As if not satisfied, he applied a little more pressure. Soon, a crimson stain spread across his robe. The white of his robe, now stained with red, was a gruesome sight. Green Jinglua's lips twitched, she quietly turned her head, pretending not to see. Yes, safe and sound. So, you'll receive the 15 million taels only after Benjamin Young has fully recovered. Otherwise, then I'll wait for his recovery and return to collect the silver from you. With that, she made to leave again. But the voice from behind, like a haunting spirit, resonated deeply. I'm afraid by then, I'll have lost my life, and there will be no silver left for you. After all, my wound has worsened, and Oliver Blake has been dismissed because of you. There's no one left in this residence to treat me. Sophia Green's hands clenched at her sides, a tempest of fury raging within her. She, Sophia Green, so astute all her life, had fallen into the hands of this shameless, thick-skinned man. At this moment, she desperately missed her precious son, whose whereabouts were unknown. Sweet Billy, so obedient, wouldn't dare utter a word even when bullied by her. This man, damn him, she wanted to kill him. Sophia Green spun around, seething. Fine, I'll treat you. I'll definitely heal your wound. Damien Black finally nodded in satisfaction, adding one more sentence. 4 days to heal. Why don't you just die already? Sophia Green scoffed, looking down at him. Lie down. Damien Black readily complied, obediently assuming his previous position. The wound continued to bleed, staining his robe crimson. Sophia Green frowned, glancing at him. Did he have a penchant for self-harm? If Billy had even a scratch, he'd raise a ruckus. Sophia Green lifted the fabric of his robe, removing the thick bandages wrapped around the wound. The next moment, her brows furrowed deeply. The wound was so deep. Moreover, it extended from his right chest down to his waist. No wonder it tears with the slightest pressure. That Oliver Blake woman has some skill. Otherwise, with the current state of medical knowledge and the severity of the wound, his life would likely be forfeit. No matter how skilled Oliver Blake is, no matter how effective her medicine, a wound that isn't stitched will be difficult to heal. At the very least, simply bandaging it like this isn't the solution. Well. Damien Black stared intently at her expression. He saw that although her complexion was unstable, she didn't show any awkwardness. He figured this wound wasn't a big deal for her. Green Tan Nuok stood up, once again with an air of superiority. I need to stitch the wound. Stitch? Can the wound be stitched closed? A flicker of surprise crossed Damien Black's mind, but his outward demeanor remained calm. If that's the case, then proceed. Sophia Green's lips twitched. Why aren't you the least bit suspicious? I could take your life with this. You're so at ease letting me do this? To you, I'm just a stranger. Damien Black closed his eyes. He realized this woman couldn't gain any advantage over him, so she deliberately spoke to him in this manner. He raised his head, his eyes stinging slightly. Never doubt the employed. If he had already entrusted Pine Ying's life to her hands, why should he doubt she might take his life because of this? Anyway, if anything happened to him, this woman wouldn't be able to escape Carter Manor. Moreover, he didn't think she was completely foolish enough to act at this time. Sophia Green snorted softly, turning to retrieve a small surgical kit from the bag she carried. This was something she had gradually crafted bit by bit after arriving in this world. Even the forceps, needles, thread, and scissors were unique. Although she was skilled in traditional Chinese medicine and enjoyed researching various poisons, Western medicine was still her habit. It might hurt a bit, you'll have to bear with it. Sophia Green didn't intend to use anesthetic on him. After all, he looked like someone who could endure it. She turned around and saw Damien Black still had his eyes closed, which made her feel uneasy. She started, removing all the clothes from his upper body. Very good. Very refined, has abs. This body is damn fine. She felt even more unbalanced. Just then, a knock came from the door. Damien Black opened his eyes, first glancing at Green Tan Nuok, seeing that she didn't react and was still focused on removing his outer garment, seemingly intending to take everything off. He hesitated slightly before speaking to the door. Come in. Samuel Harris cautiously opened the door and stepped 1 foot inside. Before he could even look up, he spoke. Benjamin Young has awakened. He says he has something to report to the master. To me? Excuse me. I've disturbed you both. I'll come back later. The door creaked as Samuel Harris quickly backed out 2 steps and slammed it shut. Then he patted his chest, trying to process the scene he had just witnessed. His heart was still pounding. Surely he hadn't been hallucinating just now? Was that Miss Green who just threw herself at Master? Were they just doing that? Samuel Harris felt his head about to pop off. It was all Benjamin Young's fault, waking him neither sooner nor later, but right when Master was in the middle of important business. Now, not only had he interrupted Master's good time, but he'd also seen Master's naked body. But wait, Master is injured. Miss Green is really too hasty. Samuel Harris, thinking something wasn't right, hesitated for a moment, then boldly knocked twice more. This time, it was Sophia Green, her face as black as a pot's bottom, who opened the door. Upon seeing him, she shoved a blood-soaked gauze pad into his hand. You've arrived just in time. Go prepare some things for me. I need to treat your master's wounds. Samuel Harris froze, only coming back to his senses after a moment. He stared at the blood-soaked gauze in his hand, then glanced into the room. Master was looking at him coldly. Samuel Harris shrank his neck and hurriedly nodded in agreement. Sophia Green instructed Samuel Harris, go prepare clean gauze, golden sore medicine, and also suture. Then she turned around, humming coldly as she walked back inside. Samuel Harris, what are you thinking? How could I possibly, with you, be intimate? Her words trailed off, her pupils suddenly widening as she stared at a small jade pendant that had fallen on the ground earlier when she helped Damien Black undress. She felt something shatter within her. Damien Black looked up, seeing her staring at the jade pendant on the ground. His deep eyes narrowed slightly as he reached down and picked it up. Sophia Green snapped back to reality and slowly walked to his side, whispering, that jade pendant, it's quite exquisite. It's none of your concern. Damien Black chuckled coldly, seemingly unwilling to discuss the matter, his hand tightening around the jade pendant. Sophia Green had no doubt that if he applied any more force, the jade pendant would surely shatter into pieces. She silently turned her head away, praying in her heart, hoping that things weren't as she thought, otherwise she really would bang her head and kill herself. For a while after that, neither of them spoke. Sophia Green's heart was heavy with worry. Damien Black also seemed somewhat gloomy because of the jade pendant incident. It wasn't until Samuel Harris entered with the prepared supplies that the silence between them was broken. Perhaps sensing the strange atmosphere in the room, Samuel Harris glanced at one, then the other, not daring to speak any unnecessary words. Since he couldn't offend either side, he obediently assisted Sophia Green. As she took out a pile of strange objects, the room became unusually quiet. Samuel Harris watched Sophia Green thread a needle, his eyes widening. After several attempts to hold back, he finally couldn't resist. Miss Green. What are you doing? There was no reply. Samuel Harris touched his neck and looked at his master, who was closing his eyes, looking as if he didn't care what Miss Green did. He could only suppress the strangeness in his heart and watch silently. Yet, in the next instant, his eyes widened as he watched Sophia Green unhesitatingly pierce the needle into the flesh of her abdomen. Samuel Harris drew a sharp breath. Just watching made his hair stand on end. Miss, you. Shut up. Though her meridians were disrupted, the process had to continue. Her hand movements were incredibly swift, her practiced demeanor as if she were merely sewing a regular garment, dazzling to behold. Samuel Harris dared not speak, fearing that opening his mouth would break her concentration and directly cause his master's death. Yet, his heart pounded in his chest. He considered himself experienced, having witnessed countless physicians treat sword and knife wounds, but he had never seen anyone use a needle to stitch human flesh like this. Even the imperial physicians in the palace had never employed such a method. But seeing Sophia Green's speed, it was clear this wasn't her first time performing such a procedure. Just what was this woman's background? The final stitch fell into place, the deep, long wound finally closed. Sophia Green straightened up, her expression unchanged, and glanced at Damian Black, a slight smirk playing on her lips. She had deliberately not given him any anesthetic, but from beginning to end, the man hadn't uttered a single groan. Even during the stitching, his muscles hadn't tensed from the pain, making her task much easier. He truly possessed remarkable endurance. Sophia Green admired him, but at the same time, she understood something: this man was not to be trifled with. If that jade pendant truly belonged to him, she needed to stay as far away from him as possible. It's done. Sophia Green wiped her hands, tossed all the instruments into a small basin, and then handed Samuel Harris a small porcelain bottle. This is medicine for him. 1 pill morning and night, don't forget. I'm a bit tired. You can clean up the rest. I'm going back to my room to rest. Samuel Harris took the bottle in a daze. He looked up. Sophia Green was already leaving the room, carrying the small basin of instruments. He stared after her for a long moment before muttering, "Why do I feel like something's chasing after Miss Green? She's running away so fast." Damian Black said nothing. Pain radiated from his wound. Although he could endure it, the entire stitching process had left him utterly exhausted. With Samuel Harris present, his vigilance completely dropped, and before long, he drifted off to sleep. Green Bamboo Courtyard was some distance from Poison Proclamation Courtyard. Sophia Green didn't stop until she reached the inner room of Green Bamboo Courtyard, where she sat down, her lips pursed. She took a jade pendant from her bosom. It was a half-moon-shaped pendant with a circular groove in the center. The patterns on the pendant were incredibly intricate, like a tiny person carved upon it, lifelike and vivid. And this jade pendant was the one that had appeared on her 6 years ago. No, it appeared on the original Sophia Green. Mrs. Margaret Taylor had said, that night, she suddenly disappeared from the U residence. She didn't return all night. It wasn't until just before dawn that she appeared at the back door of the U residence. She looked utterly disheveled. Not only were her clothes torn, but there was also blood on her skirt. Her face was pale. Mrs. Margaret Taylor, being experienced, understood the situation at a glance. Though heartbroken, she carefully concealed the matter. But unexpectedly, after that night, she was pregnant. And on the day she returned, besides a body full of aches, she clutched a jade pendant in her hand. A jade pendant that looked as if it had been broken in two. Sophia Green recognized the object as belonging to the child's father. Yet, here it was, on Damian Black, the other half of the jade pendant. If this jade pendant belonged to him, then Billy. Sophia Green's breath hitched. Her brows furrowed. She had assumed Cooper Daniels' disdain for her would lead him to choose some beggar to humiliate her, even if it was all a setup. She couldn't have imagined that the man from that night was someone like Damian Black. A man like him. She shot up from her chair, a wave of unease washing over her. The thought of Billy being in Carter Manor, so close to Damian Black, made her scalp prickle. No. Absolutely not. Damian Black cannot know about this. I have to warn Billy to leave Carter Manor immediately. And what about her? The 15 million taels of silver hadn't reached her hands yet. How could she leave? Sophia Green pressed the pouch, released it, and retrieved the small porcelain bottle from within, then released the finger-length scorpion. She sprinkled a bit of red powder onto the scorpion's back. This was the small signal between her and Billy. Red signified danger. It meant to leave quickly. The little guy would know what to do when he saw it. The scorpion scurried out of the room, following the wall and slipping into a crevice. It moved swiftly forward. However, as soon as the scorpion left Green Bamboo Courtyard, it abruptly changed direction, heading towards the Carter Manor gates, zipping out through the main entrance. Its tail twitched, moving in the direction Sophia Green had come from. People bustled along the main road, hawkers' cries filling the air. No one noticed the small scorpion carefully making its way forward. Yet, compared to the finger-length scorpion, another, much larger creature commanded attention. Wherever it went, people held their breath, involuntarily stepping back, their eyes wide with awe as they watched the man and panther approach. Billy sat proudly, his small frame perched regally on the Black Panther's back. He raised a small hand, looking at the street vendors with an air of arrogance, almost waving and shouting, "Comrades! You've worked hard." The onlookers retreated further, whispering amongst themselves. Whose child is this? Riding a panther on the streets. Aren't his folks looking after him? Right. What if he hurts someone? Move. Get back further. Look at his clothes, he must be from a wealthy family. But he's so young, daring to ride a panther around, he's got guts. Billy caught every word of the gossip, his small form straightening even further. See? Isn't this street lively? Billy leaned down, patting the Black Panther's back, his voice brimming with excitement. Shouldn't you thank me for bringing you out? Look how bustling it is here. Look, that's called a tavern. That's a stone lion, and that's a lantern. Humph. Of course, those are prettier at night. Black Panther shook its head, a flicker of impatience in its eyes. Billy, mistaking this for agreement, smirked. Ha! Aren't you glad? Seeing all these strange things? He, feeling all giddy now, aren't ya? Still love me, right? If I hadn't brought you out here, you'd still be stuck in that room, being your little country bumpkin self. Country bumpkin? You're the country bumpkin. Your whole family's country bumpkins. Who doesn't know what lanterns and taverns are? Black Panther grumbled internally. He missed his master at Carter Manor fiercely. Ironically, this brat had been chattering non-stop since morning, showing no signs of fatigue. No aim, no rest. No rest for him. And at this moment, Matthew Carter, silently trailing behind, shared Black Panther's plight. Watching Nan circle the same street for the third time, he felt like he'd been assigned to hard labor. It was just riding a panther, what was there to be so smug and excited about? 3 times around the same street, and still no sign of boredom or tiredness. Pressing his furrowed brow, Matthew Carter resignedly followed. The boy's muttering reached his ears. Country bumpkin, don't you feel so accomplished, so grand, following me around? Only you feel grand. Master, please take me home. Perhaps finally tired from all the strolling, Nan cheerfully stopped, letting out a breath. All right, we've strolled enough. Let's go find Mother. Matthew Carter, trailing behind, almost wept. Heaven had finally answered his prayers. After such a long walk, he would finally meet the legendary Mother. Jealous? Jealous, huh? Matthew Carter hurried forward a couple of steps. Just as he prepared himself to meet Nan Nan's mother, the boy and panther stopped again. Billy's small face, half hidden in the swirling white mist, could be seen swallowing hard. Matthew Carter twitched his brow, then heard the boy gulp, staring intently at the buns before him. I don't think I've eaten anything since morning. I'm starving. Matthew Carter looked down at his own stomach. He was hungry too. The bun vendor, seeing the large black panther approaching, had already gone pale. He became even more terrified when it stopped in front of his stall, refusing to move. Billy wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth, looked up at the paralyzed vendor with sparkling eyes, and offered a friendly smile. I'm very hungry. Buns. 1 coin for a bun. 1 coin for 2. The vendor's legs began to tremble. He stubbornly spoke. Billy sadly turned his pockets out. They were empty. Not even a blade of grass, let alone a copper coin. Mother holds all my money. I told you, my mother isn't here. Mister, what should I do? The steamed bun stall owner gaped, wanting to chase the two of them away. But then he felt like that would be admitting defeat, the neighbors would laugh at him, and if everyone started imitating this tactic, how could he continue his business? Thinking so, he closed his mouth, sighing heavily. A small hand patted Black Panther's back. A soft voice spoke. Bobby and I haven't eaten anything all day. But don't worry, mister. I'm not the type to eat and run. My mom taught me to be polite. If you don't have money, you can't eat other people's food. Don't worry. I won't eat. The owner silently breathed a sigh of relief. He was incredibly grateful for the mother mentioned by the boy. Finally, a sensible mother. He was rejoicing. But then, unexpectedly, Billy continued. Don't be scared, mister. I won't rob you. And I won't let my Black Panther rob you either. Although, when my Black Panther gets hungry, it can't control itself. It doesn't listen, and it likes to bite people. Whether male or female. It swallows them whole. It's also very vicious, one bite and your head falls off. But don't worry. I'll hold it back, even though I'm small and weak. The owner wanted to cry. You just said it can't control itself when it's hungry. You also said you're small and weak. So how are you going to hold it back? Black Panther, beneath Billy, felt utterly humiliated. It wanted to buck the boy off and run straight back to Carter Manor. Matthew Carter silently turned his head to look at a distant rock, speechless. The steamed bun stall owner was at his wit's end, especially when he saw Billy open his mouth, seemingly about to say something terrifying again. He shakily took 2 steps forward, grabbed 4 or 5 steamed buns from the steamer, wrapped them up, handed them over, and said with a twisted mouth. Here, take these and eat. Ha ha ha, they're on me. Come on, you look pitiful. Haze, kids are at the age of eating and growing. Eat a little more, come on. Billy's eyes lit up. He reached out and snatched the buns. You're so kind, mister. A hug, thank you, mister. Let's go. Black Panther felt finally liberated. Without a word, it turned and left the steamed bun stall. After such a humiliating experience, it swore it would never cooperate with the brat again. Billy felt satisfied. His short little legs dangled on either side of Black Panther, swinging back and forth, his face smeared with steamed bun. MMM. These steamed buns are so good. Bobby, do you want some? Oh, right, you eat carrots, don't you? Too bad, they don't sell carrots here. Even if they did, you wouldn't have any money to buy them, right? Oh, wait, panthers don't eat carrots. Insolent creature. Panther, tell me, am I not just too adorable? The owner, panting and puffing, gave me so many big steamed buns. Well, actually, there's no other way. Who can resist my natural charm? Following me will be beneficial for you in the future. Billy took another bite of the juicy steamed bun, mumbling. Matthew Carter twitched his lips. What do you mean, adorable? That was a threat, clearly a threat. And besides, it's clearly because he's next to the Master's Black Panther that he has so many advantages, right? This peculiar child, he was truly curious to death about who its parents were. Matthew Carter shook his head, sighing softly. Unexpectedly, in a moment of carelessness, Billy jumped off Black Panther and turned into a small alley ahead. The alley entrance wasn't large, only about a meter wide, but it seemed quite long. Billy followed the two sneaky men inside. Well, to Billy, those two men were indeed being sneaky. Just now, it had felt very strange. Everyone was fearfully looking at its panther, yet those two men only glanced at it without any expression, not even a bit of curiosity. Now, as it walked past, it heard two very suspicious words from their mouths. Strange doctor, weren't they talking about its mother? How did they know its mother was in Zhangchang? And were deliberately coming here to find her? Billy rubbed its little chin, feeling that these two unfamiliar men were very strange, instantly raising its vigilance to the highest level. Seeing the two men enter the back door of a tavern at the end of the alley, Billy became even more certain that these two were absolutely not good people. A true man, just entering a tavern, why not use the front door? No, I have to tell Mother. If Mother knows I've grasped such important information, she'll definitely have to look at me with new eyes and give me 2 coins. Saying that, it put on a grown-up look, rubbing its chin, and scurried out of the small alley. Matthew Carter, outside, was standing next to Black Panther. Hearing the sound coming from inside, he lowered his body and jumped onto the roof in front, looking down at the little fellow from above. Climbed back onto Black Panther's back. Turned around and headed towards the north of Zhangchang. This time, Billy didn't delay, going straight towards the inn where they had stayed before. Matthew Carter breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that things were finally progressing smoothly. Otherwise, he really wasn't sure if, with the way this little fellow was acting, something else would happen. However, he was still thinking too ideally. 2 hours later, what? You're saying my mother hasn't been back for 2 days and 2 nights? The innkeeper, trembling, looked at the Black Panther beneath the boy, swallowed, and with great difficulty managed to answer. Yes. She hasn't returned. Young master, aren't you with your mother? Billy's small face immediately drooped, its demeanor becoming dejected, not even bothering to reply to the innkeeper. Matthew Carter, hiding on the rafters, listened to the two converse, his face turning unsightly. Sure enough, things wouldn't be too smooth. It made sense. Billy had been at the MO residence for 2 days. As its mother, how could she still be at ease staying at this inn? She was probably out searching for Billy right now. This is troublesome. The innkeeper, seeing Billy looking pitiful, like it had been abandoned, couldn't bear it. After all, it had stayed at his inn for a while and was a very lovable child. He boldly stepped forward and softly consoled it. Young master, don't be sad anymore, I reckon your mother will be back soon. Ah, Uncle Innkeeper, you don't understand. I feel very uneasy. My mother is a woman, after all, not coming home at night, and for 2 days and 2 nights, what kind of decency is that? The innkeeper gaped, speechless. And Matthew Carter almost fell off the rafters. This impudent brat dared to say such things. And with such an air of self-importance. Your mother has truly had a hard time. Ah, young master, how about this, you rest in your room for a bit, what if your mother comes back right away? Most importantly, he was riding such a large Black Panther, blocking the entrance to the inn, his guests didn't dare to come in or out, greatly affecting his business. Billy resentfully glanced up at him, pursing his lips slightly. He shook his head in dismay. Forget it, I should still go out and look for my mother, sigh. Having such an unreliable mother, I'm also very tired. Matthew Carter now deeply sympathized with the boy's mother, probably having been exasperated to the point of fainting by her son more than once. After meeting her, he would definitely be very friendly and amiable towards her. Yes, consider it an apology. Billy patted the Black Panther's head and walked out of the inn again. There were still quite a few people looking at them on the road, but they were all too afraid to approach. However, at this time, Billy no longer had the mood to show off. It's just that he didn't know where to look, so he could only follow the Black Panther slowly forward, aimlessly. The sky gradually darkened, the distant sunset had dyed half the sky red. Billy was still leisurely, but Matthew Carter, walking behind, couldn't help but frown, looking somewhat worriedly at the Black Panther, which was becoming increasingly ferocious. Billy didn't understand, but he knew very well. The Black Panther ate very regularly. Today was an exception. He hadn't seen it eat or drink anything all day. It was truly giving Billy face. It's just that if this continues, the hungry Black Panther will become ferocious, and by then, I'm afraid it will directly go berserk. Matthew Carter frowned deeply. Should he appear to remind Billy? But as soon as he appeared, with this child's intelligence, he would definitely guess that he had been following him all along, and there would definitely be emotional resistance. Matthew Carter hesitated greatly, his brows furrowed even more tightly. And the Black Panther became more and more ferocious. Just as Matthew Carter was still thinking of a solution, the Black Panther suddenly roared, its body shot forward. Before anyone could react, it fiercely charged forward. Billy almost instinctively bent down, hugged the Black Panther's head, and hurriedly cried out, "Ah, Black Panther, what are you doing? Ouch, my butt is about to split. Stop, my butt is about to." The Black Panther's speed was very fast, even the wind it brought along was like a knife cutting through the air. Unbearable. The boy's voice also became broken. Matthew Carter's face changed drastically, and he sped up to chase after them without hesitation. It was the panther trained by Damian Black, its speed already unusual, not to mention the distance between Matthew Carter and it. So, even with all his might, he couldn't stop it. Fortunately, the Black Panther's direction wasn't aimless. Matthew Carter quickly discovered it was heading towards Carter Manor, giving him a slight sense of relief. Billy also noticed. His small face suddenly contorted into a myriad of expressions. It twisted in dismay. "Black Panther, you traitor! How could you bring me back here again? Didn't you promise to go with me? What are you bringing me back for? Don't tell me your lover is in here? Ah, stop. Stop. As soon as the words left his mouth, the Black Panther stopped steadily. Billy breathed a sigh of relief, with great difficulty straightening his back, about to rub his aching spine, when a familiar deep voice sounded above his head. "I said the Black Panther only recognizes one master." Billy looked up, his neck cracking, stiffly staring at the imposing man before him, involuntarily swallowing his saliva. Is that you? What a coincidence!" Billy's eyes darted around, left and right, realizing the Black Panther had stopped in the Carter Manor courtyard. He immediately wanted to bang his head against a wall. "Humph, you damn panther! Consider this score settled between us. Just you wait. I won't give you any more carrots. Do you know the consequences of kidnapping my boss?" Damian Black raised an eyebrow, looking at the little fellow in front of him trying to stretch his limbs, likely having suffered quite a bit from the bumpy ride. Billy widened his eyes, trying to lift his head, speaking righteously, "Mister, you've got it all wrong. I didn't sabotage your panther, I just wanted to take it out to see the world. Mister, I'm telling you, you can't just keep it locked up in the manor forever. Look, because of that, it's become a country bumpkin panther. It doesn't know anything about the outside world, not even the thing with the same name as it, Bao Bun. It's just so incredibly rustic." Mo Sien, who had just caught up, felt his legs go weak upon hearing this, wanting nothing more than to collapse on the ground. Seeing Damian Black listening intently, Billy spoke even more eloquently, "Mister, I wanted to broaden its horizons. You have no idea how tiring it was for me. I took it for 3 walks around town before it finally got a little bit of a sense of direction. Mister, I'm not trying to criticize you, but if you're going to raise a panther, at least raise a smart one. This one is too dumb. Look, I told it to go back, and it just ran off. Oh man, it almost threw me to the ground, not to mention almost splitting my butt in two." The more Billy spoke, the more aggrieved he felt, especially now, with his small limbs still aching. Even getting off the Black Panther's back was incredibly difficult. After a long while, he extended his small, chubby, white hand. "Mister, pull me up. Damian Black raised an eyebrow slightly and extended his hand, lifting the boy down from the Black Panther's back. Billy hit the ground, his limbs shaky, only able to cling to Damian Black's arm as he trembled to his feet. Every so often, the boy glared at the Black Panther feeding nearby. Nausea churned in his stomach, all that effort had been for nothing. Not only had he failed to chase the panther away, but he'd landed himself back where he started. Just the thought of it made him want to vomit blood. Yet, even more pathetic than Billy was the scorpion Sophia Green had released. It had initially followed Billy's scent away from the manor, only to return in the blink of an eye. Worse, it carelessly caught the attention of the now satiated, belching Black Panther. The moment the scorpion appeared, the panther pounced, pinning it beneath its claws. "Bro Panther, show some mercy with your claws." "Oh wait, show some mercy to the scorpion." As he spoke, the boy lunged forward, only to trip over his own feet. With a thud, he sprawled on the ground. "Humph." Matthew Carter chuckled as he entered, showing no restraint in his amusement. Damian Black glared at him, then bent down and lifted the boy up. He then walked over to the Black Panther and carefully pulled the scorpion out from under its paw. Billy lifted his small head, his little hand clutching Damian's robe. Uncle, that's mine." "Yours, is it?" Give it back." Billy rubbed his sore arm and tried to stand on tiptoe. Damian Black winked at Matthew Carter. Matthew quickly produced a jar and placed the scorpion inside. Billy stared, dumbfounded. "Hey, uncle, that's not right." "That's mine, you have to give it back." "I walked your panther all day, even if I didn't contribute, I still put in the effort." "You're not paying me, and now you're taking my things?" You're going to be struck by lightning." Damian Black felt something was off about the scorpion. Its back seemed to have a different coloration than other scorpions, an unusual sight. "This kid is so worked up, this scorpion might be dangerous." "I'll hold on to it for now." Billy fumed. "Uncle, Chloe Belle isn't dangerous." "She's my familiar, well, not really, but you can't discriminate against a scorpion." "Chloe Belle is adorable." "You're familiar?" Matthew Carter's lips twitched. "Chloe Belle? Who in the world came up with that ridiculous name?" Damian Black's eyes lit up. It seemed this scorpion was connected to the boy's mother. In that case, he couldn't let it go. "Matthew Carter, take Billy to his room to rest." "Yes, master." Matthew stepped forward and scooped the boy up in one arm. Billy thrashed and struggled, shaking his head violently. "Put me down! Put me down!" Matthew ignored him. The boy had worn him out all day. Once he settled Billy down, he still had to report the day's events to his master. The sound of Billy's protests gradually faded, but the indignant yells continued, seemingly full of energy. Damian Black patted the Black Panther's back, the small porcelain jar in his hand. Step by step, he reclaimed his room. William Thomas was already waiting outside the solemn declaration. Seeing Damian Black, he hastily bowed. "Master, have you found anything?" Damian Black glanced at him, noting his poor complexion. Uncharacteristically, he offered him the adjacent seat. William Thomas, aware of being drugged and suffering stomach pain all afternoon, paled further at Damian Black's question. Shamefaced, William Thomas confessed, "I am incompetent, master. I couldn't discover Miss Green's family. There aren't many Greens in Jiangchang, yet none have a daughter of her age." Damian Black tapped his fingers on the table, contemplating the woman whose medical skills were extraordinary. "Perhaps you're investigating in the wrong direction." "What does master mean?" "Perhaps she isn't from Jiangchang. Or perhaps she isn't a sheltered young lady." William Thomas's pupils contracted, his brow furrowing. "Not from Jiangchang?" But her accent was undeniably local. And her attire suggested wealth. Yet, his master's words held merit. Perhaps a different investigative approach was needed. With that thought, he rose to continue his inquiries. Damian Black waved him off. Even after William Thomas left, his brow remained furrowed. He felt he was overlooking a crucial detail, a piece of the puzzle. The chest pain had lessened considerably. That woman was truly skilled. Her medicine seemed to have analgesic properties. Compared to her, Oliver Blake was utterly inadequate. Master. Lost in thought, Damian Black heard Matthew Carter's voice. Looking up, he saw Matthew's grim expression, as if he was hesitant to speak. Damian frowned, anticipating trouble from the fearless young boy, his own expression hardening. What is it? Master, Billy says, if you don't return Chloe Bell to him, he'll go on a hunger strike. Matthew Carter recalled Billy's righteous declaration, his dramatic vow of solidarity with the Scorpion. His own temple throbbed. A hunger strike? Damian Black couldn't help but chuckle. As long as he was happy. Matthew Carter stared. Master, aren't you being unreasonable with a child? Matthew Carter opened his mouth to intercede. Billy's pleading look at the door, almost kneeling, had been heartbreaking. But his master's serious expression silenced him. He swallowed his words. Billy, Uncle Matthew was sorry. Go ahead and starve. Clearing his throat, Matthew adopted a serious demeanor and relayed Billy's antics on the journey. Damian Black could picture the boy's smug face. He was truly a unique child. You say he dismounted the Black Panther and entered a narrow alley? Yes. Damian Black pondered for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. Investigate that alley. See if there's anything unusual. Matthew Carter nodded. Yes, Master. Furthermore, have someone keep an eye on Billy at the inn. If his mother shows up, report back immediately, understood? Matthew Carter withdrew. Only Damian Black remained in the room. The jar on the table was still there. The Scorpion inside seemed restless, wriggling as if trying to escape, futilely yet persistently. Just like that brat. Billy was furious. Chloe Bell's capture was one thing, but his cruel hunger strike against that old man was useless. He was heartless, incompetent, indifferent, and reckless, daring to mistreat such an adorable, beautiful, little prodigy, a child beyond human description. Just you wait, both of you, just wait. He wouldn't spare them, even as a ghost. Billy was so angry he became sleepy. Before Matthew Carter returned, he had already fallen asleep, his head pillowed on his arms. Matthew Carter wanted to kneel and worship him. Didn't he say he wanted to live and die together, advance and retreat together? Chloe Bell was still struggling, but he was snoring away, having neatly folded his clothes and placed them aside, washed his face, stretched, and covered himself with a blanket. So heartless, so meaningless. Sighing softly, Matthew Carter felt naive for believing his words because of his pitiful expression. That hunger strike was utterly unreliable. Billy slept soundly. Sophia Green, on the other hand, was extremely uneasy. Scorpion had been out for half a day and hadn't returned. Now it was dark, and there was still no sign of him. This place was complicated and troublesome. Could something have happened? Sophia Green was so irritated she couldn't sleep all night. Her spirits were low the next morning. She didn't touch the breakfast the butler sent, pushing it aside and going back to sleep until the sun was high, past the time for Damian Black's medicine and checkup. Someone waited in the poison room for half a day without seeing her. His already limited patience completely vanished. Samuel Harris, standing beside him, trembled inwardly, repeatedly peeking out the door, praying for Sophia Green's swift appearance to avoid becoming collateral damage. Master, the butler hurried over, whispering, Miss Green is still asleep. Humph, she sure knows how to sleep. Samuel Harris gulped, softly advising. Well, Master, Miss Green is probably tired. Yesterday, she helped Benjamin Young detoxify and treated your injuries. She's a girl, she needs more rest to regain her strength, right? He had barely finished speaking when he received a sharp glare. Samuel Harris's heart jolted, and he immediately shut his mouth. You're quite the gentleman, aren't you? Damian Black's smile grew colder. Samuel Harris silently wept. Wasn't he just trying not to offend either side? Master, why does your tone sound a bit sour? Damien Black frowned, suddenly standing up. Go check on her. Ha! Samuel Harris was stunned, then hurriedly called the butler to follow. He was now terrified that his master and Miss Green would clash. Seeing his master's impatience and knowing Miss Green wouldn't back down, he had to keep watch. All three stood before Sophia Green's door. Damien Black frowned at the closed door, raising his hand to knock several times but hesitating each time. Samuel Harris and the butler beside him were puzzled. Why was Master so hesitant? Samuel Harris, you go knock. Damien Black hesitated for a moment, then stepped back. Being called upon, Samuel Harris's eyelids twitched. He knocked twice on the doorframe in a proper manner. Miss Green, Miss Green. Are you awake yet? Sophia Green had actually heard the noise for a while. She just didn't want to pay attention. She thought they would go away after knocking a few times. After they left, she remained motionless on her bed. Samuel Harris really wanted to turn around and leave. But his master was standing there, blocking his way. He couldn't leave even if he wanted to. After a pause, he raised his hand and started knocking again. Hey, Miss Green. Our master has some business with you. Are you up yet? It's getting late. Sophia Green rolled her eyes. Still ignoring them. Damien glared at Samuel Harris. It seemed he was very dissatisfied with Samuel Harris's gentle and soft tone. He reached out a hand and pushed Samuel Harris aside. However, just as he was about to raise his hand to knock, he suddenly saw a small figure staggering towards them from afar. Before Damien could react, he heard Billy's angry voice. Old man, I'm really angry. I'm a guest, after all. I'm a delicate and precious child, and you won't let me eat or drink. Are you even human? Samuel Harris's face changed. He felt like the sky was about to fall. This kid. Why did he have to run into the master when he was in a bad mood? He looked up. Damien sighed helplessly. Billy had already rushed to Damien's front. His small fists pounded fiercely on Damien's shins. He snorted twice. I want to eat crispy fried chicken. I want to drink that wine from the other day. I want to eat beef, lamb, tongue, lots of meat. I want to eat meat. 3 black lines appeared on Samuel Harris's forehead. Why did he sound like a carnivorous animal? Billy saw that the person in front of him didn't budge. He looked up. He just happened to see Damien raising his hand to knock on the door. He blinked in surprise. Blinked again. His attention was immediately diverted. He asked softly. Old man, what are you doing here? Damien winked at Samuel Harris. Samuel Harris hurriedly picked up Billy, intending to leave. Damien withdrew his gaze. He knocked twice on the doorframe. Miss Green, open the door. The door remained motionless. Billy wriggled his small body. Like a snake. He quickly slid down from Samuel Harris. He looked up at Damien. His eyes were full of contempt. Old man, the person inside isn't opening the door. You're so useless. Damien acted as if he didn't hear, continuing to knock on the door. Billy, expressing that he couldn't bear to watch anymore, pulled Damien Black back a few steps. He rushed to the front of the door and stood blocking it. Old man, knocking like that is useless. You have to knock like this. Little Billy's small palms began to slap the doorframe with force. He yelled while slapping. Open the door. Open the door, open the door. You have the guts to steal a man. You have the guts, then open the door. Don't hide in there without making a sound. I know you're home. Shameless hussy. Ha ha ha, open the door, open the door, open the door. Whore. 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 Even the always calm Damien Black's eyes widened in shock. Samuel Harris, Matthew Carter, and the butler were even more astonished, their jaws almost dropping to the floor. So this is how you open a door? This. Miss Green inside must be furious. This brat better not face any misfortune later. Damian Black was the first to react, frowning towards Samuel Harris and snapping, "Quickly take him away." Speaking like that to a lady, he could imagine Billy's fate. Samuel Harris snapped out of his daze. Crouching down to pick up Billy, the door suddenly opened from the inside. Billy, without lifting his head, excitedly turned back and said triumphantly to Damian Black, "Uncle, see, it opened." The four people outside the door stiffened, silently turning to look at Sophia Green. Sophia Green coldly looked down at the little boy, her voice icy enough to freeze hearts. No one moved as she gritted out each word. "Billy Green." The voice sounded familiar. The smile on Billy's face faltered. His small hands nervously retreated, his tiny body trembling with fear. Sophia Green grabbed the back of his collar, her voice frigid. "What you just said. Repeat it for me." Billy took a deep breath, weakly turning his head to glance at Sophia Green. His eyes widened involuntarily, his lips trembling. After a long moment, he stammered. "M.O. Mother." "Mother?" Samuel Harris and the steward nearly stumbled and fell. Matthew Carter, though he had never met Sophia Green, had heard of her. His pupils constricted. He never expected the person he had been searching for would be right before his eyes. Of those present, only Damian Black frowned slightly. She was married? And had a son this old? A broken connection in his mind suddenly mended. His gaze, sharp and probing, fell upon Sophia Green's face. Samuel Harris, still in disbelief, waited until his legs stopped shaking before mustering the courage to step forward, asking in an ingratiating tone, "Miss Green, is Billy your son?" Sophia Green gave a slight humph, her gaze flicking briefly over Damian Black with a complex expression. Though fleeting, Damian Black caught it. His frown deepened. Matthew Carter, curious, looked at Billy. The boy, seemingly terrified, began to cry, his head bowed in fear. Matthew Carter's lips twitched. It was hard to reconcile this image with the mischievous child of the past 2 days. The door slammed shut, this time taking with it the previously boisterous Billy. Those left outside stared at each other, struggling to process this revelation. Samuel Harris rushed over to Damian Black, exclaiming, "Hey, master. This is so strange. Miss Green looks at most 17 or 18. Billy is already 5. Did Miss Green have a child at 12 or 13? Indeed, we searched everywhere outside, never expecting her to be right here in our MO residence." Matthew Carter scratched his head. It was hard to accept this reality. Damian Black pursed his lips, staring at the door, silent, his thoughts unknown. Samuel Harris sighed, a hint of annoyance in his breath. "Miss Green, is she truly Billy's mother?" "I don't think so." "Hey, master, what do you think? Is there a chance they aren't blood relatives? Maybe she adopted him?" Damian Black's expression shifted slightly. Adoption was indeed a possibility. Miss Green's age didn't seem like someone with such a grown-up child. Matthew Carter nodded. What were memories? Before he could finish his thought, a heart-wrenching cry erupted from within. "Mother, I was wrong. Mother, don't leave me. Mother, I didn't know you were in there. Just now, I was talking nonsense." Damian Black and the others standing outside the door shuddered. The desperate cries made their hearts pound. Billy knelt on the ground, his arms wrapped tightly around Sophia Green's legs, his small face rubbing against her robe, tears and snot smearing her clothes. "Mother, as a magnanimous person, please don't hold it against a lowly villain like me. You know. I speak without thinking. You know my thoughtless nature comes from my father. It can't be compared to my intelligent and lovely mother." Sophia Green smirked slightly. A thoughtless nature inherited from her father. When she and Damien were alone, why did she feel this trait resembled him so much? Samuel Harris and Matthew Carter exchanged glances outside the door. They said in unison, "But, isn't it true, word for word?" What kind of mother treats her son like this? Crying like this, and she doesn't even offer a word of comfort? Mother, I missed you so much. These days without you, I haven't been able to eat or sleep well. I've lost so much weight. Feel my little cheeks. Haven't I lost a lot of flesh? Billy clung tightly to Sophia Green's leg, his face pitiful. Seeing Sophia Green still frowning and silent, his heart began to fill with anxiety. Matthew Carter couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Lying without batting an eye. That was probably it. Sophia Green finally couldn't hold back any longer. She picked Billy up and set him aside. Then, with a look of disgust, she glanced at her wrinkled clothes, which had been rubbed by the boy, and glared at him. Billy, what did I tell you that day? Billy pursed his lips, his round eyes blinking, before replying in a small voice, Mother told me to wait for you there. So why are you here? Speaking of which, Mother, this really isn't my fault. As if finding someone to blame, Billy scrambled up from the ground and automatically carried a small stool over to sit down. Mother, it's all Uncle Mac's fault. I was perfectly fine up on the rafters. Uncle Mac ran off on his own, fine, but he insisted on dragging me down with him. Tell me, was he just full of himself? Or was he planning to use me as a shield? Matthew Carter stood petrified at the door, catching Samuel Harris's sympathetic gaze, and immediately felt the urge to drag Billy out and give him a good thrashing. Excuse me, he was standing right outside the door. Did he consider his feelings when making such blatant false accusations? Sophia Green raised an eyebrow. Uncle Mo? Billy Green nodded vigorously. Yes, the man standing at the door, the one in white who fought under the rafters that day. Sophia Green suddenly understood. Knowing her son's temperament, how could she not be aware? She brushed off her skirt, elegantly crossed her legs, and smiled with narrowed eyes. Did you poison him? How is Mother so smart? Billy Green was startled, weakly climbed down from the chair, and clung tightly to her leg. Mother, I was forced. Sophia Green resisted the urge to kick him away, her voice deepened. Forced? Yes, because I saw that Uncle Mo is definitely not an ordinary person, he must have many valuable treasures. Seeing his plan to falsely accuse others exposed, Billy Green quickly switched tactics, his eyes sparkling as he smiled at Sophia Green. Mother, do you think I'm right? Let me tell you, in this manor, there's a very big, very majestic, very fierce Black Panther. I originally intended to bring it back as a tribute to you, but the panther is a bit dumb, it doesn't listen to me. So, these past 2 days, I've been staying here, planning to train it well before bringing it back. Sophia Green silently rubbed her forehead. Although she also coveted the Black Panther, its owner was not someone easily provoked. Samuel Harris, Matthew Carter, and the butler quietly turned their heads to see the dark expression of Damien Black, then quietly turned back. These two were bold indeed, daring to scheme for his belongings right in front of the master. Damien Black snorted coldly, his icy gaze swept over the three in front of him, and he spoke in a cold voice, "Tell him to come to my room in 1 moment." With that, he left Jade Bamboo Courtyard without looking back. The remaining three exchanged glances. Was he referring to Miss Green or Billy Green? But regardless of who, at this moment, they had to interrupt the mother and son's conversation to bring them to the master's courtyard. Knowing Sophia Green's temperament, Samuel Harris didn't hesitate, immediately stepped back 2 paces, then forcefully pushed the butler forward, speaking seriously, "You go knock on the door." Harris, you seem to know Miss Green better. He wasn't a fool, offending Miss Green would not end well, as evidenced by William Thomas. Not really, we've only known each other for 2 days. But Miss Green seems to trust you. That's just your imagination. As they were bickering, the door opened from the inside. Sophia Green leaned against the doorframe, giving the three of them a cold smile. So, do you need me to invite you in for some tea? Billy Green peeked out from behind her and added, I can add a little something to the tea. The three of them simultaneously took a step back. Samuel Harris took the opportunity to grit his teeth and speak up. Miss Green, the master requests you visit his quarters soon. He hesitated for a moment, thinking the master must be calling for Miss Green. Sophia Green recalled Damien Black's injuries and his demand to recover within 4 days, causing her to frown. The real trouble was that man. "Mother, I'll go with you," Billy Green bravely stepped forward. "There's a big black panther by that man's side, very dangerous. I'll protect you." Billy Green felt that he must not leave his mother now. It was time to show loyalty. Making her happy might make her overlook his past mistakes. Sophia Green glanced at the boy and waved to Samuel Harris. "Keep an eye on him for me, just give him some food." With a little whine, Billy Green instinctively added, then realized it. "Wasn't right," and quickly said seriously to Sophia Green, "Mother, you're more important than food." Sophia Green snorted disdainfully. "You can drink today." "Really?" Billy Green's eyes lit up, his small hand immediately leaving Sophia Green's coat as he skipped towards Samuel Harris. "Mr. Harris, let's go." Samuel Harris shivered slightly. "Mister? Why did this kid act like he was visiting a brothel?" Billy Green was hopeless. Sophia Green silently rubbed her forehead and instructed the butler to lead the way. She didn't want to see her son, who could betray her at any moment. No matter what, she couldn't let Billy Green interact too much with Damien Black. Otherwise, with that man's cunning and Billy Green's foolishness, something bad would surely happen. The butler dared not make a sound along the way, still immersed in the shock of learning that Miss Green and Billy Green were mother and son. He couldn't fathom how they became related. The private courtyard door was already open, as if prepared to welcome her. Damien Black lay on his cold bed, and upon seeing Sophia Green enter, he merely lifted his eyes slightly before closing them again. The butler quietly closed the door after leading her in. "Did you come to the mansion to find your son?" Sophia Green's steps halted, her rosy lips pressed together as she let out a soft hum. "Yes. Why didn't you say it earlier?" Damien Black slightly opened his eyes, watching her expertly undress him, the movement suggesting she had done this many times before. A wave of irritation surged within him, and he abruptly pushed her hand away. Sophia Green was taken aback, sensing his unstable emotions, and looked up in surprise. "So what if I didn't say it at first? Is it such a grave sin? I wasn't sure if you were good people or not." "Now I am." Damien Black huffed, seeing her stop moving, his eyebrows furrowed in annoyance. "Fine. For 15 million taels of silver, I'll tolerate your unpredictable temper." Sophia Green shook her head and continued undressing him. His wound was healing well. With her technique in medicine, Damien Black's injury had stopped bleeding and would soon be fully healed. "Who is your husband?" Damien Black was silent for a moment before speaking again. Sophia Green paused slightly while bandaging him, then calmly replied, "Dead." "Dead?" Damien Black suddenly opened his eyes, scrutinizing her expression, but saw no emotion, as if the topic had nothing to do with her. She had no feelings for her husband. This woman had too many secrets. "Master." As Sophia Green was dressing him, the butler's voice came from outside the door. Damien Black slowly sat up on the bed. "Come in." "Master." The butler glanced at Sophia Green before hesitantly speaking. "Oliver Blake requests to see you." "Not meeting." Damien Black didn't even bother to open his eyes, showing no reaction to the name Oliver Blake. "But Oliver Blake brought news, saying the ghost doctor is in Arjun City." "The ghost doctor?" Sophia Green lowered her head, her lips twitching slightly. Damien Black frowned, finally getting up from the bed and walking past the butler out of the room. Outside, Matthew Carter, Samuel Harris, William Thomas, and Billy Green, who was dozing on Samuel Harris, were waiting. Seeing him come out, William Thomas couldn't contain his excitement and stepped forward. "Master, that ghost doctor, on par with the legendary healer Thuangkung, is really in Jiang City." Sophia Green's lips twitched again. So her reputation was this big. Seeing William Thomas so excited, if he knew the ghost doctor was her, would he still suspect her of poisoning Benjamin Young? Oliver Blake said that although Master didn't trust him, he always kept Master in mind. The butler followed Damien Black out of the room, carefully speaking. He said that the wounds on Master were healing, and the poison affecting the Youngs was also improving, but it would be better to invite the ghost doctor for a checkup. No need, Miss Green is in the mansion, and her medical skills are quite good. Sophia Green felt quite pleased hearing this. Oliver Blake really liked to draw attention. Having been kicked out of the mansion, he still wanted to go around boasting, even using her reputation. Truly reckless. However, William Thomas felt worried and quickly stepped forward to advise, "Young master, I know Miss Green's medical skills are excellent, and I believe she can heal both you and the youngs. But Miss Green is still young and a woman, lacking the experience of the ghost doctor, who is an elder. Moreover, the ghost doctor is currently in Jiang City. I've investigated, and in 2 days, he'll be at the Fulong Hotel in the southern suburbs helping patients. It wouldn't hurt to take a look." Sophia Green tilted her head to look at him, wondering why William Thomas seemed so fixated on the ghost doctor, almost idolizing him. Besides, who told him the ghost doctor was an elder? Did she look like an old person? Truly limited knowledge. Looking at the others in the courtyard, they all seemed to agree with his words. If that's the case, I also think William Thomas makes a good point. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's eyes turned towards Sophia Green. Even Damian Black raised an eyebrow in surprise. He thought William Thomas's words would surely displease her, as someone as proud as she would not like others doubting her medical skills. But unexpectedly, she agreed with William Thomas. Sophia Green shrugged. "Why are you all looking at me? I'm a doctor, and of course, I'm curious about legendary figures like that. I want to meet him, and maybe I can learn some medical skills from him, right?" Damian Black gave her a strange look, remained silent for a moment, and finally nodded under everyone's expectant gaze. "If Miss Green wants to meet him, then let's go take a look." The eyes of William Thomas, Samuel Harris, Matthew Carter, and even the butler revealed a peculiar look as they glanced at Sophia Green. Hearing the master's words, it felt as if Miss Green was the one truly in charge of the Black Mansion. Billy Green, already drunk, suddenly lifted his head from Samuel Harris's shoulder, gave his mother a drowsy look, then tilted his head and fell back asleep. Sophia Green's mouth twitched, and she picked up the boy, preparing to return to her room. "Wait a moment." Just as she took a step, Damian Black's calm voice came from behind her. Immediately, a small porcelain jar was brought before her eyes. Catching Sophia Green's questioning gaze, Damian Black turned away, his voice a bit colder. "Is this scorpion yours? A scorpion?" Sophia Green swiftly snatched the jar and glared at him fiercely. She had been wondering where her precious scorpion had gone, only to find it in his hands. She put the jar away without a word and headed straight back to her jade bamboo pavilion. Beside her, Samuel Harris rolled his eyes and hurried to follow, flattering, "Miss Green, let me carry this little one for you, don't tire yourself." Damian Black's lips tightened instantly, watching the three of them walk away like a family of 3 on a trip, his expression dark and intimidating. The butler standing nearby sensed the cold aura emanating around him, causing his whole body to shiver. After a while, he mustered the courage to speak. "Master," he said, "that Oliver Blake is still waiting at the door. Should I send her away?" His voice was extremely cold, and after speaking, he didn't look at anyone there, slamming the door shut with a loud bang. Matthew Carter and William Thomas exchanged glances, both puzzled, unable to understand why the master's temper had suddenly become so irritable. The butler, feeling distressed, took small steps and quickly headed towards the main gate. Oliver Blake was still waiting there, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. She quickly stepped forward, unable to resist peering behind him. "Butler Carter, where is the master?" "The master told you to go home." Knowing Oliver Blake's personality well, the butler's attitude was naturally not pleasant, and his demeanor was not as respectful as it was towards Sophia Green. In just a few short days, Sophia Green seemed to have left a deep impression on everyone, making them all cautious. "Go home?" Oliver Blake was a bit incredulous. "Did you clearly tell the master, Butler Carter?" "I conveyed all your words to the master. The master is aware that the ghost doctor is in Jiang City. I made it very clear, and I believe the master understood it clearly." "Then, did you tell the master that I'm very worried about his injury and that the woman named Green isn't trustworthy?" The butler's face showed a hint of impatience. "Miss Green detoxified the youngs and healed the master's wound. If she's not trustworthy, then are you? In short, I've passed on everything you wanted me to say. What the master decides to do is his business. I can't interfere. You should leave and don't show up at the Black Mansion again. Oliver Blake gritted her teeth, glaring at Butler Carter, who had been respectful to her just 2 days ago, almost spitting blood in anger. You lowly dog, just a mere county official, do you really think you're so great? Butler Carter, did the master say when he would meet the ghost doctor? Suppressing her anger, Oliver Blake asked in a calm tone. She couldn't enter the Black Mansion, so she could only wait for the master to come out. She no longer trusted Butler Carter in front of her, feeling that he hadn't conveyed her intentions clearly. If the master were to meet the ghost doctor in 2 days, that would be her last chance. The butler, seeing through her intentions, said nothing and turned to close the door. Oliver Blake was furious, pounding her fist on the large door. Butler Carter, what do you mean by this? Open the door. How dare you treat me like this? You'll regret it later, open the door, open the door. Butler Carter chuckled, rolled his eyes, and walked away without turning back. Oliver Blake shouted outside for a long time, but there was no response from inside. Instead, some nearby residents peeked out to see what was happening. Perhaps feeling embarrassed, Oliver Blake muttered a couple of curses under her breath and quickly left the Black Mansion's gate. However, as soon as she was out of the Black Mansion's guard sight, 2 people jumped down from the wall, threw a sack over her head, tied her up, and quickly disappeared down an alley. Oliver Blake's heart skipped a beat, and before she could cry for help, she felt a sharp pain in her neck and passed out. The 2 who captured her exchanged glances, showing no mercy, and tossed the sack containing her onto a waiting carriage. With a whip crack, the carriage sped off like an arrow. After an unknown amount of time, the carriage stopped in front of a shabby hut. Oliver Blake, discomforted by the bumpy ride, was thrown into the house, hitting her head and regaining consciousness. The sack was removed, and she rubbed her head to clear her mind, looking around. Suddenly, she shrank back in fear, staring at the woman sitting with her back to her in the middle of the room, trembling as she asked, "Who are you? What do you want?" The woman chuckled softly, the beads in her hair swaying attractively. She slowly turned around, stepped in front of Oliver Blake, and looked down to ask, "Are you Oliver Blake? Who are you? I asked you, is the owner of the Black Mansion named Black?" What a mistake they had made, searching all this time, never thinking that Damian Black lived in such a grand mansion. The saying "great hermits hide in the city" seems to apply here. If they hadn't been following the girl named Oliver Blake, they might still not know where Mr. Black lived. Oliver Blake's pupils contracted, they had come looking for Master. She immediately became alert, raising her head to look at the woman still smiling in front of her. "How is Damian Black's injury?" The woman squatted down, leaning in as if to closely observe every expression of Oliver Blake. Oliver Blake took a deep breath. The master's injury was known only to those in the Black household and the people who had harmed the master, which meant these people were not good. She couldn't say anything. She absolutely couldn't talk about the master. Oliver Blake suddenly turned her head away. Although she wasn't very smart, she still had basic logic. Regarding the master's affairs, she already knew little, and now she couldn't reveal anything more. "What? You don't want to talk?" The woman's slender fingers suddenly gripped her chin tightly, her eyes flashing with malice. "Then don't blame me. Cut off one of her fingers for me." The woman's voice suddenly became sharp. A cold light flashed as a sharp knife pressed against her skin, and with a hiss, a small blood-stained fingertip rolled to the corner of the room. Oliver Blake was stunned for a moment, and then the excruciating pain spread throughout her body, her agonizing screams echoing throughout the house. "Ah! It hurts so much! Ah!" Oliver Blake clutched her bloody finger, curled up on the ground, her eyes filled with pain and disbelief. She never expected this woman wouldn't give her time to think and would act so cruelly. "Now, are you still unwilling to talk?" The woman continued to smile, squatting down, her fingers gently brushing Oliver Blake's forehead. Oliver Blake trembled in fear, no longer caring about the pain, and quickly nodded, "I'll talk. I'll talk." At this moment, she had no doubt that this woman could kill her right there. The woman, satisfied, stood up and sat back in her chair, twisting her body, casting a sidelong glance at her. Did you treat Damien Black's wound? How much has it healed? I don't know, Oliver Blake said shakily. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the woman's face darken and quickly tried to explain. Initially, I treated the master. The injuries were severe, although I managed to save his life, it was still very dangerous. However, later on, a woman with the surname Green from the MO residence took over. Her medical skills are exceptional, and she continued the treatment. Perhaps by now, he has recovered about 70 to 80%. Oliver Blake understood clearly that the people before him did not want Damien Black to survive, so by pushing Sophia Green forward, they would certainly see her as a thorn in their side. A woman with the surname Green? Indeed, Sophia Green quickly caught her attention. Oliver Blake nodded hastily, yes. Yes. Her medical skills are extraordinary. Even someone on the brink of death could be saved by her. Even as a disciple of Elder Stone, I must admit my inferiority in front of her. With her presence, even if Damien Black were at death's door, she could probably save him. Disciple of Elder Stone? The woman couldn't help but look at him with a mocking expression. Is that woman named Green really that formidable? Yes. Benjamin Young, who was poisoned and barely alive, was also saved by her. In the woman's eyes, a flicker of surprise appeared. The poison in Benjamin Young was their doing, and she knew better than anyone how severe his condition was. She had assumed that even if he were brought back, he would have been buried by now, yet he was still alive. That woman named Green seemed to be quite a nuisance. The woman sighed in relief, looking at Oliver Blake kneeling on the ground with a hint of disdain in her eyes. I want you to lead us into the MO residence. Oliver Blake was taken aback and quickly shook his head. I can't do that. The terrain of the MO residence is complex. Aside from the hidden guards and a few of the master's personal guards, I can't get in. Moreover, I haven't been there long and know very little. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to humbly beg the steward to meet the master today. Then why did you come to the MO residence today? I just heard that the ghost doctor is in Jiang City. I thought perhaps the master's injuries might be examined by the ghost doctor. After all, the background of the woman named Green is unclear, and she can't be completely trusted. I'm worried she might be a threat to the MO residence. You truly care about Damien Black? Oliver Blake lowered his head, his mouth filled with bitterness. So what if she worried about him? That Green person must have given Master some kind of potion, making him defend her like that. Is Damien Black going to meet the ghost doctor? I don't know. Oliver Blake shook his head, this was the truth. The woman remained silent, gently tapping on the table. After a long pause, she spoke to the expressionless man standing beside her. Take her away and keep watch. Yes. The man nodded coldly and carried Oliver Blake out of the room. Oliver Blake wanted to plead for mercy, but before he could speak, he was knocked unconscious. Only a few people remained in the room. The woman stood up and walked to the window, glancing in the direction of the Black residence, a cold smile playing on her lips. Brian, what do we do next? After a long silence, the man behind her stepped forward and respectfully asked. In 2 days, we will also go to the Fulong Inn at Nam Jiao. Do you mean Damien Black will appear there in 2 days? Whether he shows up or not, we must be there waiting, it's our only chance. Moreover, even if we don't encounter Damien Black, we might find the legendary ghost doctor. It's said the ghost doctor possesses the Ice Dew pill, and their medical skills rival those of the renowned Elder Gongshan. The madam has long desired to acquire him. The man pondered for a moment and nodded. I understand. 2 days later, at the Phuc Long Inn on the southern outskirts. Rumors spread quickly, even though Sophia Green initially only wanted the beggars to pass the message to Daniel Cooper alone, she couldn't stop the curious from prying. Thus, at the break of dawn, the inn was already packed with guests, all there either to seek treatment or to witness the appearance of the demon doctor firsthand. The innkeeper grinned widely. It was rare to have so many guests, so she worked even harder. Naturally, prices skyrocketed. What could be done? There were many wealthy people, and if they didn't take this opportunity to make a profit, how could they be worthy of the opportunity Sophia Green had brought them? Madam, isn't the price of this dish too high? Who can afford to eat at such rates? The waiter approached the innkeeper nervously, holding the menu price list, wishing he could just disappear. Even if they wanted to make money, they should do it more subtly. The owner of the Phuc Long Inn was a young woman, about 20 years old, with enchanting eyes that carried an indescribable charm. Seeing the waiter's troubled expression, she couldn't help but snort. Darren, these are the guests that little Sophia Green brought in. Do you think she won't demand a share from me? I'm worried the prices are too low, and later there won't be enough to divide. Darren bowed his head, thinking it over and finding it reasonable. Miss Green was never polite, and if they didn't earn a bit more, even his wages might be at risk. He reluctantly put away the menu, instructing others to work quickly. Madam, the private rooms are all full, the main hall is packed, but there are still many people outside wanting to get in. Should we set up tents outside for the guests? The busy attendant ran in, sweating profusely, but thrilled at the large crowd. Gently touching her face, Samantha Irvin thought for a moment and shook her head. No, setting up tents is too much trouble, and with so many people here, we're already short-staffed. Oh, Darren, have all the guests in the private rooms received their tokens? Darren nodded. They've all received them. Oh? Who arrived first? The guest's surname is Cooper, seems to be from the capital. But he wouldn't disclose his name, only mentioning his companion's name as David Cooper. Samantha Irvin's hand paused, her eyebrows slightly raised. Cooper? So that's it. She found it very strange. Sophia Green always avoided appearing in public, yet this time she made such a big scene, aiming at the Cooper family in the capital. This was going to be interesting. Who else is there? Darren looked at the notebook in his hand and softly replied, the mysterious Mac residence in the West City has also booked a private room early. There's also a young lady wearing a veil, who looks young but carries an air of elegance. The Owens family, famous for their generosity in Jiang City, has also booked a private room, but none of them have been sick recently, so why are they joining in the fun? The rest are other wealthy families from Jiang City. All private rooms are fully booked, and in the main hall are the ordinary citizens of Jiang City, some seriously ill, others just there to see the real face of the ghost doctor. Samantha Irvin smiled. That little Sophia Green, she really has a true face, so many people coming just to see her in person, it's quite a spectacle. Madam, when will Miss Green arrive? Darren was genuinely worried. They all knew how unreliable Miss Green could be, and she was certainly capable of pulling a stunt like this. If she didn't show up, wouldn't these people tear apart their Fulong Inn? Samantha Irvin's mouth twitched. How would I know when that girl will arrive? She better show up soon, or I'll skin her alive. Ah! Achoo! The person being mentioned sneezed awkwardly, casually taking a handkerchief she always carried in Billy Green's coat to wipe her nose. Miss Green, are you unwell? Samuel Harris hurriedly poured her a glass of water, placing it considerately on her table. Sophia Green shook her head. Someone must be cursing me. That woman Samantha Irvin has probably been nagging about me since morning. Damian Black stared at the steaming cup of tea, sneering at Samuel Harris. Samuel Harris suddenly felt a chill down his spine, quickly turning around to give his master a forced smile. Hey, master, please enjoy the tea. Damian Black shot him a sideways glance, said nothing, and just opened the window of the private room, looking outside through the thin curtain. Downstairs was already bustling, unusually noisy, with many guests craning their necks, trying to catch a glimpse of something from the seemingly simple but sturdy inn. Most people held a numbered card in their hands, perhaps a trick played by the elusive ghost doctor. The young Billy Green also had one, given to him by the butler, though he didn't know what it was for. Billy Green murmured to himself, playing with Black Panther, still unaware of why his mother had brought him to the Genie Inn. This inn was quite remote, requiring a long detour, forcing the boy to wake up early, and he was still sleepy. Quite a few people had already arrived, some looking familiar, but the boy couldn't recall where he had seen them before. Among them, a young lady caught the boy's attention. So many people, master, what is this inn up to? This card. Matthew Carter glanced at the main hall downstairs, where someone was already getting impatient and started shouting loudly. Damian Black raised his hand, took a sip of tea. Wait. Yes. Matthew Carter was also feeling anxious inside. This mysterious healer seemed to be quite self-important, and it was unclear what they were really up to. Sophia Green finished her cup of tea and then raised an eyebrow, glancing at the people in the private room. The people Damian Black brought were very cautious. Even though they were anxious inside, they didn't show any signs of impatience on their faces, nor did they send anyone to hurry things along. She looked up at the time. It was getting late. If she stayed any longer, Samantha Irvin might lose her temper. I should go out for some fresh air. Putting down the cup, Sophia Green slowly stood up, straightened her clothes, and went outside. Damian Black slightly furrowed his brows, his gaze lingering on her back with a hint of contemplation. Samuel Harris chuckled. I think Miss Green isn't just going out for some fresh air, she's eager to sneak a peek at the healer's appearance. Healer? Billy Green looked up in confusion. Did she just hear the words healer? That can't be right. Her mother is here, so why would they be talking about a healer? Billy Green shook her head and happily continued playing with Black Panther. Hearing this, Damian Black felt something was off, but before he could think it through, the voice of the innkeeper from the Fulong echoed from downstairs.